This 6-year-old girl was abandoned by her own father in an abandoned house. But little did he know, a man lived there, and 2 minutes later, the girl starts crying at what he does to her. Comment what you think is going to happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. It was a rainy night in Harmony Creek, a small town in rural Missouri, when Arthur Reynolds, 45, drove his luxury SUV down the muddy back roads. In the back seat, Lily, his 6-year-old daughter, clutched her favorite teddy bear, not understanding why her father was taking her for a drive so late. Her big brown eyes watched the raindrops on the window as the car drove further and further away from downtown. "Daddy, where are we going?" the girl asked for the 3rd time, her small voice almost lost in the storm. Arthur adjusted the rearview mirror, avoiding looking directly at his daughter. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles were white. "It's a surprise, Lily. You're going to see a special place." The agricultural businessman, known throughout the region for his wealth and influence, had other plans in mind. His empire was quietly crumbling, eroded by debt, and failed. Investments that no one but him knew about. Not even Darlene, his dedicated housekeeper of 15 years, who practically raised Lily after Melissa left for Europe, suspected the gravity of the situation. The car stopped in front of an old house on the outskirts of town. The building, which had once seen better days, was now covered in vines and surrounded by an overgrown garden. Arthur got out of the car, opened the back door and picked up Lily, along with her small pink backpack. "Daddy, this place is spooky," Lily murmured, clinging tighter to her teddy bear. "Don't be scared, princess. I'm going to show you something amazing inside," Arthur lied, his voice wavering slightly. Inside the house, the smell of mold and decay was strong. Arthur turned on his cell phone flashlight, illuminating the path through the dusty living room. His footsteps echoed across the old floor as he carried Lily to one of the downstairs bedrooms. "Stay here quietly," he said, putting the girl on the floor. "Daddy's going to get the surprise from the car." Lily, shivering with cold and fear, watched her father leave the room. Seconds later, she heard the sound of the car starting. "I ran to the window just in time to see the taillights disappearing into the dark, rainy night." "Daddy! Daddy!" she screamed desperately, but her voice was drowned out by a clap of thunder. Upstairs in the house, Joseph Meadows, 78, a retired philosophy professor, rose from his worn armchair upon hearing the screams. For years he had lived quietly on the property that everyone believed to be abandoned after losing everything in a devastating flood. He took his gas lantern and cautiously descended the stairs, his joints complaining with the effort. Lily's sobs echoed through the empty house. The girl, terrified by the darkness and the sounds of the storm, ran blindly until she found the basement door, where she hid, clutching her teddy bear. Meanwhile, at the Reynolds mansion, Darlene was organizing Lily's room, unaware that the girl would not be coming back to sleep. She was tidying up the scattered toys when she found a manila envelope under the bed. Inside, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. A life insurance policy for $5 million in Lily's name, signed by Arthur the week before. In the old house, Joseph followed the sounds of crying, his decades of experience as a teacher guiding him to the basement door. Upon opening the door and raising the lantern, his eyes met the small figure huddled in the corner, trembling and sobbing. "It's okay, little one," he said in a soft voice, keeping his distance so as not to frighten her further. "I'm not going to hurt you." Lily looked up with tearful eyes, finding an old man with white hair and a gentle expression. Something in his gaze reminded her of her maternal grandfather, whom she hadn't seen since her mother left for Europe. "Where's my dad?" she asked between sobs. Joseph felt his heart clench. In his 78 years of life, he had seen much evil, but Abandoning a child on a stormy night was a level of cruelty he could not comprehend. "Come with me, little one. It's cold down here. I have hot chocolate upstairs." At the Reynolds mansion, Darlene tried to call her boss's cell phone, but all calls went to voicemail. Her hands trembled as she held the envelope with the life insurance policy. Years of caring for Lily had given her a sixth sense for danger, and something told her the girl was in danger. Upstairs in the old house, Joseph prepared hot chocolate in his small makeshift kitchen, while Lily, still scared but a little calmer, watched the old man with curiosity. Mother's gas lantern cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating an almost magical atmosphere. "Do you live here, sir?" Lily asked, her voice still shaky. "Yes, little one. This house may seem scary, but it is my home. You know, sometimes things are not what they seem at first glance." As he poured the hot chocolate into a cup with flower designs, Joseph noticed something familiar in the girl's features. Those eyes. Where had he seen them before? In town, Arthur drove back to his mansion, the rain pelting the windshield hard. His hands trembled on the steering wheel as he tried to convince himself that he had made the right choice. In 3 days, according to his plan, he would report Lily's disappearance to the police, blaming Melissa for his daughter's vanishing. What none of them knew was that that stormy night would mark the beginning of a story that would forever change their lives. Darlene, with the insurance envelope in her hands, began her own silent investigation. Joseph, trying to comfort an abandoned child, had no idea that she would help him confront ghosts from his own past. And Lily, drinking hot chocolate in the kitchen of a gentle stranger, did not yet understand that her father would never come back for her. The storm continued to lash Harmony Creek, its thunder echoing like omens of turbulent days to come. In the old house, while Joseph told stories to distract Lily, a yellowed photograph on the bookshelf caught the girl's attention. In it, a group of high school students posed next to a younger teacher, but unmistakably Joseph. And among the smiling faces of the students, one in particular stood out, one that she knew very well from the old photos in her house. The next morning, Darlene arrived earlier than usual at the Reynolds mansion. Her hands still trembled as she remembered the envelope. With the life insurance policy she had found the night before, the 52-year-old housekeeper, who had dedicated a large part of her life to that family, felt the weight of worry on her shoulders. Upon entering the kitchen, she found Arthur already sitting at the breakfast table, distractedly fiddling with his cell phone. Something in his expression was different, a shadow, a restlessness that she had never seen before. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. Has Lily woken up yet?" Darlene asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Arthur looked up from his cell phone slowly. "Lily is not home, Darlene. Melissa took her last night." Darlene's blood ran cold. In 15 years of working in that house, she had learned to recognize when her boss was lying. "But how so, Mr. Reynolds? Isn't Mrs. Melissa in Europe?" "She came back without warning," he replied dryly. "She showed up here yesterday saying she had rights over the girl. There was nothing I could do." Darlene felt her legs weaken. 2 years ago, when Melissa left for Europe after the turbulent divorce, she had promised to keep in touch with her daughter through video calls. However, the calls became increasingly rare until they stopped completely. How could she have appeared out of nowhere to take Lily? Meanwhile, in the old house, Joseph woke up early as usual. He found Lily still sleeping on the living room sofa, clutching her teddy bear. During the night, he had managed to calm the girl with stories and hot chocolate, but he knew that the day would bring new challenges. The former professor walked to his small makeshift kitchen, where he began to prepare a simple breakfast with what he had: homemade bread that his neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, always brought him, and milk that he bought at Joe's corner store. His thoughts constantly returned to the photograph that Lily had noticed the night before, the one showing a class from the local high school in 1995. where a young Arthur Reynolds smiled among the students. Joseph remembered that time well. Arthur was one of his brightest students, but also the one that worried him the most. There was in him an immoderate ambition, a thirst for power that ended up corrupting his character over the years. "Good morning, Mr. Meadows." Lily's small voice brought him back to the present. The girl was standing at the entrance to the kitchen, her brown hair disheveled and her eyes still sleepy. "Good morning, little one. Did you sleep well?" he asked, pulling out a chair for her to sit down. "I dreamed about my dad," she replied, climbing into the chair. "He's coming back to get me, isn't he?" Joseph's heart clenched. How to explain to a 6-year-old that she had been abandoned? "Lily, we need to talk about something important, but first, let's have breakfast." At the Reynolds mansion, Darlene climbed the stairs towards Lily's room, her heart beating fast. Something was very wrong. Upon entering the room, she noticed that the drawers were the same way she had arranged them the day before. The girl's toothbrush was still in the bathroom, and her favorite pajamas remained folded on the bed. What mother would take a child without her clothes and personal belongings? And why would Melissa, who had always been a loving mother despite the distance, act so abruptly? In the kitchen of the old house, Joseph served Lily chocolate milk while trying to find the right words. The girl nibbled on the homemade bread, her curious eyes exploring every corner of the simple but welcoming kitchen. "Lily, do you remember that photo you saw last night? The one with a lot of students?" he began. The girl nodded. "You were my dad's teacher, weren't you?" "Yes, I was. And that's why I know your dad well. Sometimes adults make choices that are hard to understand." Before he could continue, they were interrupted by a knock on the door. Joseph's heart skipped a beat. In all these years living quietly in that house, he never received visitors besides Mrs. Peterson, who always came through the back. "Stay here quietly," he whispered to Lily, who immediately cowered in the chair. Upon opening a crack in the door, Joseph found Joe, the owner of the corner store. "Professor, sorry to come so early, but I need to warn you. There's a man going round asking if anyone has seen a lost girl. He's showing pictures and offering money for information." Joseph's blood ran cold. Arthur had already begun his charade, sooner than he expected. "Thank you, Joe. Rest assured that I'll be careful." Closing the door, the former professor realized that he needed to act fast. He couldn't allow Lily to return to Arthur's hands, but he also couldn't simply keep a child hidden without raising suspicion. At the mansion, Darlene found an opportunity to enter Arthur's office while he was taking a call in the garden. Her hands trembled as she searched the drawers, looking for any clue about Lily's true whereabouts. In a folder hidden at the bottom of the last drawer, she found documents that made her heart stop. In addition to the $1 million life insurance policy, there were papers showing that Arthur's companies were on the verge of bankruptcy. Back at the old house, Joseph realized that Lily was attentively observing his books piled on the makeshift shelves. Years of teaching had taught him to recognize a curious mind. "Do you like books, little one?" Lily's eyes lit up. "I like them, a lot. But Dad says reading stories is a waste of time, that I should study math to take care of his business when I grow up." Those words hit Joseph like a punch. It was the same Arthur he had known years ago, always belittling the power of art and literature in favor of profit. "You know, Lily, when I was your dad's teacher, he didn't like stories much either. But stories have a special power. They can help us better understand the world and people." As they talked, Joseph began to develop a plan. He needed to protect Lily, but he also needed to expose the truth about Arthur without putting the girl at risk. And more importantly, he needed to help her process the trauma of abandonment in a way that would not destroy her ability to trust and love. In town, the news of a missing child began to spread. Arthur gave interviews, feigning concern and accusing Melissa of having kidnapped her own daughter. His performance was convincing. Tears in his eyes, voice choked, the perfect portrayal of a desperate father. But Darlene knew too much, and when she received an international call that afternoon, her world turned upside down. On the other end of the line, Melissa was panicked. "What do you mean my daughter is missing? I'm in Europe, Darlene. I haven't left here." The housekeeper felt the weight of the truth on her shoulders. Now she was sure Arthur had done something terrible to Lily, but how to prove it? And more importantly, where was the girl? The day progressed in Harmony Creek, and with it, tensions grew. Joseph, realizing that he would need help, decided to trust his old friend Irene, the town librarian. But before he could make contact, an accidental discovery by Lily would change the whole course of the story. Playing around, exploring the house, the girl found, hidden behind a bookshelf, an old folder with yellow documents, among them a series of papers with her father's signature dating back 20 years. Documents that Joseph had kept for decades, waiting for the right moment to use them. The former teacher watched the girl with a heavy heart, knowing that those papers contained proof of Arthur's first great fraud, the crime that started his fortune and turned him into the unscrupulous man he was today. Night was approaching, bringing with it heavy clouds that promised another storm. At the Reynolds mansion, Darlene kept her discoveries in a safe place, preparing for a battle that she knew she would need to face. In the old house, Joseph told stories to Lily, trying to protect her not only from the approaching rain, but also from the storms, emotional storms to come. And in his luxurious office, Arthur made a call that would change everything. "I need you to find my daughter, Tommy. No matter the cost. I can't let them find out the truth." The week progressed in Harmony Creek, and with it complications grew. Tommy Sullivan, 50, a private investigator known for his questionable methods, had been in town for 3 days. Staying at a discreet motel downtown, he watched every suspicious move, every comment from the locals about the case that stirred up the small town. In his simple room, Tommy studied the photos of Lily provided by Arthur. The girl had a shy smile and expressive eyes that seemed to hide a sadness that children her age shouldn't know. Something about this story didn't add up. Why would a father pay a fortune to find a daughter who, according to him, was with her mother? In the old house, Joseph developed a routine with Lily. The mornings were dedicated to reading. He discovered that the girl had a natural talent for stories and poetry, something that Arthur had always discouraged. At the moment, they were sitting in the simple but welcoming room, where Lily read aloud from a book of American folk tales. The little ant was very sad because she couldn't go to the party, she read, her small voice full of emotion. "Mr. Meadows, why don't some people let others be happy?" The former professor adjusted his reading glasses, thinking carefully about the answer. "Sometimes, little one, people get so caught up in what they want that they forget to think about the feelings of others." "Like my dad?" Lily asked, surprising Joseph with her insight. Before he could answer, they heard knocking on the back door. The code that Mrs. Peterson, his 75-year-old neighbor, used to warn him that she was arriving. The lady came in carrying a basket covered with a colorful cloth. "I brought fresh biscuits," she announced, but her smile faded when she saw Joseph's worried expression. "What's wrong, Professor?" "Martha, I need to tell you something," he said, while Lily was distracted by the delicious smell coming from the basket. "But not here." In the kitchen, while Lily savored the biscuits in the living room, Joseph explained the situation to Mrs. Peterson. The lady, who had lost a daughter to domestic violence years ago, felt her heart clench. "You can count on me, Professor. I'll bring food every day through the back, and if anyone asks, I'll keep saying that you live alone." Meanwhile, at the Reynolds mansion, Darlene faced her own dilemma. Arthur had begun to act increasingly erratic. That morning, she found him burning documents in the backyard. "Need any help, Mr. Reynolds?" she asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. "No, Darlene, I'm just organizing some old things," he replied, but his hands trembled as he fed the fire. The housekeeper noticed that some papers had the bank's letterhead. Were they records of the debts she discovered? Or something worse? Her concern increased when, hours later, she overheard a phone conversation with her boss. "I don't care how, Tommy. You have a week to find her or the deal is off," Arthur shouted in his office. Darlene took advantage of his departure for a business meeting and began her own investigation. In the office, she found more compromising. Documents, bank statements showing suspicious transfers, shell company papers, and the most disturbing, notes on the value of Lily's life insurance policy. At the town library, Irene Santos, 68, organized the books when she noticed an unusual movement. A man she didn't know was asking many questions about the residents of the region. Something about his demeanor made her uneasy. "I'm looking for information about abandoned houses in the area," Tommy said, trying to sound casual. "Do you know of any that have strange activity lately?" Irene, who had known Joseph for more than 4 decades, felt a chill. "No, sir, this is a small town. Everyone knows each other. There's not much mystery." But she knew she needed to warn her old friend. As soon as the investigator left, she took her old cell phone and typed a simple message. "Visitor coming. Be careful." In the old house, Joseph received the message with concern. He looked at Lily, who was drawing quietly in an old notebook that he had found. In recent days, the girl had shown an impressive talent for art, another gift that Arthur would probably have stifled. "Lily, we need to establish some new rules," he said, sitting next to her. "For now, we can no longer stay near the windows. And when someone knocks on the door, you need to hide in the special place I showed you, remember?" The girl nodded, serious. "Is it because of my dad, isn't it? Is he looking for me to hurt me?" The question hit Joseph like a punch. How could such a small child understand so much? "I won't let anyone hurt you, little one, I promise." In Europe, Melissa finally got a ticket to the US. After Darlene's call, she couldn't sleep, consumed by guilt and worry. How could she believe Arthur's lies for so long? How did she leave her daughter in the care of a man who always prioritized money above everything else? In her apartment in Paris, while packing hastily, she found an old photo. Lily, at 4 years old, smiling in her lap. Tears streamed down her face as she promised herself that she would fix her mistakes. Back in Harmony Creek, the situation was starting to get tenser. Tommy was getting dangerously close to the truth. On a particularly hot afternoon, he discovered, through conversations with locals, that the abandoned house occasionally had smoke coming from the chimney. "They say it's haunted," commented a teenager passing through the area, "but my grandma says there's a retired professor living there." That information made Tommy smile. Finally, real progress. He decided to set up discreet surveillance at the house, watching from afar any suspicious movements. What he didn't know was that Joseph had more allies than he imagined. The neighbors, who always respected the professor who educated generations of young people in the city, created a silent protection system. When they saw Tommy or anyone suspicious, they found ways to warn him. Mrs. Peterson began to bring not only food, but also information about the investigators' movements. Her grandson, who worked at the downtown bakery, kept his eyes open for any news. One afternoon, while Lily was drawing, she asked a question that took Joseph by surprise. "Why have you kept those papers of my dad's for so long?" The former professor sat down heavily in his favorite armchair. "Because sometimes we need to keep the truth until the right moment to reveal it." "And when is the right moment?" "When revealing the truth can help more people than hurt," he replied, thinking about the documents that proved how Arthur had built his fortune through fraud. That night, A strong storm hit Harmony Creek. Joseph and Lily were in the kitchen preparing hot chocolate when they heard footsteps in the garden. Quickly, the former professor turned off all the lights and took Lily to the hiding place. A small space between the walls that he had discovered years ago. "Stay quiet, no matter what happens," he whispered, closing the secret panel. Tommy circled the house, protected by the rain and darkness. Through the blurred windows, he tried to see any sign of movement. For a moment, he thought he saw a shadow. Impasse, but it could just be the reflection of the lightning. The investigator was about to give up when he noticed something interesting. A child's drawing attached to the refrigerator, partially visible through the kitchen window. He smiled, satisfied. Now he was sure the girl was there. But before he could make any move, a group of neighbors appeared with flashlights, concerned about possible flooding in the area. Tommy was forced to move away, promising to return at another time. Inside the hiding place, Lily trembled, not with fear but with anger. "Why doesn't he leave me alone?" she whispered when Joseph finally took her out of hiding. "Because your father still hasn't learned that there are things more important than money," replied the professor, hugging her. What none of them knew was that Darlene had finally gathered enough evidence of Arthur's illegal activities. That same night, she sent an email to Melissa with all the scanned documents. The storm continued strong in Harmony Creek, but now it was Arthur who couldn't sleep, haunted by his own demons and the growing fear that his plan was about to collapse. The annual Harmony Creek Summer Festival was approaching, bringing a special energy to the small town. The streets were beginning to be decorated with colorful flags. The smell of popcorn and barbecue sauce already lingered in the air, and the children animatedly rehearsed the typical dances in the schools. For Lily, watching all this through the blurred windows of the old house, it was torture not to be able to participate. "Mr. Meadows," she called one morning while the former professor prepared coffee, "weren't you ever a dance teacher too?" Joseph smiled, immediately understanding what was going on in the girl's head. During the last few weeks, he had watched how she looked fascinated at the rehearsals that took place in the backyard of the nearby school. "No, little one, but Mrs. Peterson was a square dancing teacher for many years. Why do you ask?" Lily's eyes lit up. "It's just that I've never square danced. Dad said it was for common folk, that I needed to focus on learning piano and etiquette." Those words hit Joseph deeply. It was the same Arthur he had known decades ago, always belittling popular traditions, always trying to distance himself from his humble origins. That afternoon, while Lily took her nap, Joseph talked to Mrs. Peterson about the girl's desire. The lady, with her 75 years of wisdom, had an idea. "Professor, what if we taught her right here? I can bring my granddaughter Rose, who is the same age. It would be less lonely for the little one." The idea was risky, but Lily's smile when she heard about the plan made it worthwhile. In the following days, the living room of the old house was transformed into a small dance hall. Mrs. Peterson brought her granddaughter Rose, a cheerful 6-year-old girl who immediately became friends with Lily. Meanwhile, at the Reynolds mansion, Darlene faced her own challenges. Arthur had begun to distrust her, questioning her schedules and movements. That morning, he called her to the office. "Darlene," he said, his voice falsely casual, "you have served this family for so long. It would be a shame if something threatened that loyalty, wouldn't it?" The housekeeper felt a chill, but kept her composure. "I don't understand, Mr. Reynolds. I have always been loyal to you and Lily." "Precisely for that reason," he continued, his cold eyes fixed on her, "I hope you are not hiding anything from me, especially about my daughter." Darlene left the office trembling, but more determined than ever. That night, after making sure Arthur had left, she made an important call. To Melissa, "Mrs. Reynolds, are you already in the United States?" "I arrive tomorrow, Darlene," replied Melissa, her voice tired after hours of flight. "But I can't go straight to Harmony Creek. I need to gather more evidence in New York first. Are you sure about what you found? Absolute. And there's more. I think I know where Lily might be. In the old house, the square dance rehearsals continued. Lily learned the steps with a joy that Joseph had never seen before. Rose was an excellent partner, patient and fun, always inventing new games. But the piece would be interrupted in the most unexpected way. One afternoon, while the girls were dancing and Mrs. Peterson was marking the rhythm by clapping, Tommy passed by the street. The sound of children's laughter caught his attention. The investigator approached the house silently, getting a partial view through a crack in the curtain. His heart raced as he recognized Lily, dancing happily with another girl. Immediately he took out his cell phone to call Arthur, but something stopped him. The scene he observed did not seem to match the kidnapping story his client had told. The girl did not seem scared or neglected. On the contrary, she radiated happiness. At that moment, Joseph noticed the investigator's presence. With a calm he didn't feel, he asked Mrs. Peterson to take the girls to the kitchen, using the excuse of a snack. "I know you're out there," said the former professor, opening the door. "Why don't you come in so we can talk?" Tommy, caught by surprise, hesitated for a moment before accepting the invitation. Inside the simple but organized house, he observed the walls covered with books, Lily's colorful drawings scattered on the table, the welcoming atmosphere that in no way resembled a captivity. "You were Arthur's teacher, weren't you?" Tommy asked, surprising Joseph. "How do you know that?" "I did my research, and the more I discover about Arthur Reynolds, the less I like what I find." In the kitchen, Lily and Rose ate cornmeal cake, oblivious to the tension that unfolded in the living room. Mrs. Peterson, however, remained alert, ready to act if necessary. "Why are you helping Arthur?" Joseph asked, serving coffee to the investigator. "A man with your experience should realize when there is something wrong with a story," Tommy sighed, spinning the cup between his hands. "At first, it was just another job, but after seeing how he treats people, how he lies without the slightest remorse, I started to have doubts. And now that you've seen Lily happy and safe, now I'm sure he lied about everything. But we need a plan, because Arthur won't give up easily." The conversation was interrupted by Lily, who ran into the room. "Mr. Meadows, can I show my drawings to the man?" The former professor exchanged a look with Tommy before agreeing. The girl brought her drawing folder, spreading them proudly on the table. They were surprisingly expressive drawings for a child her age, colorful landscapes, portraits of the new family she had found, and one in particular that caught Tommy's attention. A man in a suit throwing a girl into the darkness. "That's my dad," Lily explained with painful simplicity, "the day he left me here." That moment changed everything for Tommy. It was no longer just an investigator doing a job. Now he was a witness to a story of abandonment and redemption that needed to be protected. "I shall help you," he declared finally, "but we need to act fast. Arthur is getting desperate, and desperate people do crazy things." What none of them knew was that at that exact moment, Arthur received a call that would make him lose the last shred of sanity he still held. It was his accountant informing him that the latest attempts to hide the debts had failed. In 48 hours, everything would come to light. At the New York airport, Melissa finally landed on American soil. In her bag, in addition to the documents sent by Darlene, there was something even more valuable, proof that Arthur had forged documents to get her exclusive custody of Lily 2 years ago. The summer festival was approaching, bringing with it not only the promise of joy, but also the possibility of an inevitable confrontation. Lily, who now square danced with confidence thanks to rehearsals with Rose, had no idea that her destiny would be decided during that traditional celebration. In the old house, Joseph, Tommy and Mrs. Peterson planned how to protect the girl during the festivities. They knew it would be impossible to keep her away from the festival, not after weeks of rehearsal and the joy she showed when dancing. "We can disguise her," suggested Mrs. Peterson. "All the children will be dressed alike in typical clothes and hats." "It's risky," pondered Tommy. "But maybe it's our best chance to expose Arthur without putting Lily in danger." What they didn't count on was Darlene's cunning. The housekeeper, who had discovered even more compromising documents in Arthur's office, planned her own move during the festival. The night of the summer festival promised to be memorable in Harmony Creek, but for reasons that no one could yet imagine. While the town prepared to celebrate, a storm much bigger than the clouds forming on the horizon was about to break. The night of the summer festival finally arrived in Harmony Creek. The central square was unrecognizable, transformed into a true fairground with colorful flags, food stands, and a large bonfire that would be lit later. The smell of popcorn, corn on the cob, and barbecue sauce mixed in the air, creating that unique atmosphere of small-town festivals. In the old house, Lily could barely contain her excitement as Mrs. Peterson adjusted the final details of her summer dress. The girl spun in front of the mirror, enchanted with the colorful ribbons and the decorated straw hat that matched Rose's. "You look beautiful, little one," said Joseph, watching from the door. His heart was tight. He knew the night would be decisive, but he didn't want Lily to notice his concern. "Will I remember all the steps, Mr. Meadows?" she asked, rehearsing the choreography once more in the middle of the room. "Yes, you will," replied Mrs. Peterson, adjusting the ribbon in her hair. "You and Rose are the best dancers I've ever taught." Meanwhile, at the Reynolds mansion, Arthur prepared to attend the festival. As one of the town's most important businessmen, his presence was expected. But his thoughts were far from the celebrations. He had just received a disturbing phone call from his accountant. "The transfers were traced, Mr. Reynolds," said the nervous voice on the other end of the line. "The bank will notify the authorities early tomorrow. I couldn't postpone it any longer." Arthur hung up the phone violently. His plan was crumbling rapidly. If he didn't find Lily soon, his whole scheme would come to light. His daughter's life insurance policy was his last chance to save his financial empire. Darlene, who overheard the conversation hidden, took advantage of her boss's distraction to make her own call. "Mrs. Reynolds, are you already in town?" "I arrived an hour ago, Darlene," replied Melissa in a low voice. "I'm at the hotel, as we agreed. Are you sure Arthur is going to the festival?" "Yes, ma'am. He can't miss it. It would be very bad for his image. And I have more evidence to show you. Documents I found earlier today in the office. They're even worse than we imagined." In the old house, Tommy arrived through the back for final adjustments to the plan. The investigator, who was now a crucial ally, had spent the day mapping every entrance and exit to the square. "There are at least 10 trusted people scattered throughout the festival," he informed. "Any suspicious movement by Arthur will be notified." Joseph nodded, but his concern was visible. At 78 years old, he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. It wasn't just Lily's safety that was at stake. It was the chance to finally correct a mistake from decades ago when he didn't prevent his former student Arthur from following a path of greed and corruption. "Professor," called Tommy, noticing his restlessness, "there's something I need to tell you. I made a discovery today that could change everything." Before he could continue, they were interrupted by Lily and Rose, who ran into the kitchen. "Grandma, Peterson said it's time." The group left through the back, taking different paths to the square so as not to attract attention. Lily and Rose went with Mrs. Peterson, mingling with the other children who would participate in the square dance. Joseph followed another path with Tommy, his slow steps masking the urgency of the moment. In the square, the festival was in full swing. Entire families enjoyed themselves at the stands, children ran with colorful flags, and the elderly gathered in circles of conversation fueled by barbecue sauce. From afar, Joseph spotted Arthur arriving in his luxury car. his face a mask of false cordiality as he greeted those present. Darlene was also there, busy at the sweet stand but always attentive. She had arranged a signal with Melissa. When Arthur was distracted by the start of the square dance, she would guide her to the place where she kept the evidence. The night progressed, and the moment of the children's presentation approached. Lily, hidden among the other girls, felt her heart beat fast. It wasn't just the emotion of the dance. Something in the air said that tonight would be different. "Attention, everyone," called the announcer on the microphone. "Let's welcome now the children's square dance from the municipal school." The music started, and the children entered the fenced area for the dance. Lily, with her straw hat partially covering her face, danced with genuine joy alongside Rose. For a moment, all the problems seemed to have disappeared. That's when everything started to go wrong. Tommy noticed first. Arthur was restless, his eyes scanning every child who danced. Suddenly, his gaze stopped. Even with the hat and the typical dress, he had recognized something familiar in Lily's movements. He noticed, Tommy whispered to Joseph, "We need to act now." But Arthur was faster. With determined steps, he began to approach the dance area. His movement caught the attention of some of those present, who didn't understand why the businessman would interrupt the children's presentation. At that moment, Darlene made her move. "Fire!" she shouted, pointing to one of the stands where she had, purposefully, spilled some barbecue sauce near some straws. The small confusion that followed was enough to distract Arthur. Mrs. Peterson, understanding the signal, quickly led Lily and Rose out of the dance area, mixing them with other children who ran, frightened by the small commotion. But Arthur wouldn't give up easily. He followed the direction he saw the girls running, his face contorted into a mask of fury. That's when a familiar voice paralyzed him. "Long time no see, Arthur." He turned slowly, finding Melissa standing a few feet away, holding a folder that he immediately recognized. It was the same as the ones he kept in his office. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I came to get our daughter," she replied firmly, "and this time I have all the proof of your lies." While the confrontation unfolded, Joseph guided Lily and Rose through the side streets of the square. His heart beat fast, and a sharp pain in his chest made him slow down occasionally. "Mr. Meadows, are you okay?" asked Lily, noticing his difficulty. "I just need to rest a little one," he replied, leaning against a wall. But he knew it was more than tiredness. His heart, already weak, was protesting against all that agitation. In the square, the situation was complicated. Arthur, cornered by Melissa's presence and by the increasingly suspicious looks of those present, tried to maintain his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, forcing a smile. "Our daughter was taken, you know that. I even hired an investigator." "Oh, you mean Tommy," interrupted Melissa, and as if on cue, the investigator appeared by her side. "He told us everything, Arthur, about how you abandoned our daughter, about the life insurance policy, about the fraud." The crowd, which had previously been dispersed, began to approach, attracted by the discussion. Many recognized Melissa from old photos in the local newspaper, when she was still the respected wife of the town's most important businessman. At that moment, a scream cut through the night. "Help! Professor Joseph has collapsed!" Arthur's heart froze. That name, his former teacher, the man who knew all his secrets since his youth. Following his instinct, he ran towards the scream, pushing people along the way. He found the scene that confirmed his worst fears. Joseph was sitting on a park bench, pale and gasping, with Lily holding his hand. His daughter, whom he had abandoned in that old house, had been with his old professor all along. "Stay away from her!" Arthur shouted, advancing. But a human barrier formed instantly. They were Joseph's former students, people he had educated over decades who now protected their old master. "Enough, Arthur," said a firm voice. It was Irene the librarian emerging from the crowd. "You've hurt enough people." The square was completely silent now. All eyes turned to that surreal scene. The powerful businessman Arthur Reynolds, confronted by his past and present, surrounded by an entire community that finally saw his true face. Joseph, even weakened, raised his voice. "Remember what I always told you in class, Arthur, that our choices build not only our future, but the future of everyone around us." At that moment, sirens began to sound in the distance. Arthur's accountant had kept his word. The authorities were on their way. But before they could arrive, Joseph had one last card to play, a document kept for decades that would reveal the exact moment when Arthur chose the path of dishonesty. The summer festival, Night in Harmony Creek, had transformed into the stage for a reckoning long overdue. And while the sirens approached, Lily held Joseph's hand tightly, knowing instinctively that her life would never be the same. The silence that took over the square was almost palpable. The colorful flags of the summer festival swayed gently in the night breeze, while the central bonfire continued to crackle, oblivious to the drama that unfolded. Joseph, still sitting on the park bench and visibly weakened, held a yellowed envelope. "Arthur," he began, his voice weak but determined, "for 30 years I kept this with me, hoping that one day you would find the right path on your own. But now I see that I waited too long." Lily, still holding the professor's hand, watched the scene with a surprising understanding for her 6 years. Her summer dress, once a source of so much joy, was now slightly crumpled from the rush. "Professor, please," Arthur's voice faltered, revealing a vulnerability that no one in the city had ever witnessed. "Don't do this." Melissa approached, placing her hand on Lily's shoulder protectively. The girl looked up, recognizing her mother even after 2 years of separation. There was so much love in that look that for a moment all the hurts seemed to have disappeared. "Mr. Meadows," called Darlene, approaching with a glass of water, "you need to rest. Your blood pressure." But the professor made a gentle gesture with his hand, refusing the rest. "I need to tell this story. Everyone needs to understand how we got here." The crowd moved closer, forming a respectful circle. There were merchants, teachers, farmers, people who had known Arthur since his youth, who had followed his meteoric rise from the son of small farmers to the region's biggest businessman. "In 1995, Joseph began, his voice gaining strength with each word, "I was a philosophy professor at the local high school. Arthur was my brightest student, but also the most restless. He had a dream, to transform his parents' small property into an agribusiness empire." Mrs. Peterson, who was holding Rose's hand, nodded, remembering the time. "His parents were such good people, John and Mary, hard-working, honest. One October afternoon," continued Joseph, "I found Arthur in the chemistry lab after hours. He was altering the soil analyses of several properties in the region, reports that would be used to evaluate loans at the agricultural bank." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some of the older ones began to put together pieces of a puzzle that had intrigued them for decades. "With those fraudulent reports," Joseph's voice trembled now, "many small farmers received loans far above what their land was actually worth. When they couldn't pay, Arthur bought everything for peanuts," completed Joe, the owner of the corner store, his voice loaded with a late understanding. "That's how his empire began." "I should have reported it," admitted Joseph, tears running down his wrinkled face. "But I believed I could save him. I kept the evidence and tried to show him another way. I failed." At that moment, Lily let go of Joseph's hand and took a step towards her father. Her small brown eyes, so similar to those of her grandmother Mary, studied the face of the man who abandoned her. "Why, Daddy?" she asked, her small voice echoing in the silent square. Why is money more important than people? That innocent question hit Arthur like lightning. He staggered back, his face a mask of agony. For the first time in decades, the tears that streamed down his face were not part of an act. That's when Tommy, who was watching everything closely, noticed something worrying. "The professor needs help, quick!" Joseph had closed his eyes, his breathing irregular. The effort that night had been too much for his fragile heart. While the ambulance was called, an even greater revelation was about to come. "There's one more thing," said Joseph, his voice now just a whisper. "Arthur, remember the day of the flood that destroyed my house? It wasn't a natural accident." Arthur's face paled completely. That flood 20 years ago had destroyed not only Joseph's house, but all the documents he kept, or so everyone thought. "The dam was sabotaged," continued the professor, "and I have proof of that too. I kept everything in a place you would never think to look, in the town library, catalogued as teaching material about natural disasters." Irene, the librarian, confirmed with a nod. During all those years, she had been the silent guardian of those documents, waiting for the right moment. The ambulance arrived, and the paramedics rushed to attend to Joseph. As he was placed on the stretcher, he made one last request. "Lily, dear, on the third shelf in my room behind the poetry books, there's a blue box. Get it." Melissa, who didn't leave her daughter's side, offered to go to the old house to get the box. Tommy accompanied her, leaving Lily in the care of Mrs. Peterson and Darlene. What they found in the box left everyone speechless. It wasn't just documents. It was photos, newspaper clippings, letters, a complete timeline of how Arthur had built his empire through fraud and manipulation. But there was something more. A diary written by Joseph, dedicated to Lily. "Dear Lily," read the first page, "if you are reading this, it means that you have finally found a true home. When your father left you on that rainy night, I promised myself that I would not only protect you, but that I would teach you what he never learned, that the true value of a person is not in what they possess, but in what they are capable of giving." The sirens of the police cars could already be heard in the distance. Arthur, realizing that there was no more escape, made his last attempt. "Daughter, forgive me. I can change. We can start over." But Lily, with a wisdom that only children possess, replied, "Dad, you need to first learn what Mr. Meadows tried to teach you so long ago. That love is not something you buy." In the weeks that followed, Harmony Creek lived a true revolution. Arthur faced the consequences of his actions, and many families finally understood how they had lost their lands years ago. But the most impressive thing was the transformation that happened in the old house. Joseph, after a week in the hospital, returned home stronger. His heart, though fragile, was light for the first time in decades. The community, touched by his story of dedication and love, transformed the old house into a community center. Melissa decided to return to the US permanently, buying a house near Joseph's. Lily finally had the family she always dreamed of, a present mother, a surrogate grandfather who loved her unconditionally, and an entire community that protected her. The square dancing classes with Mrs. Peterson continued, now open to all. The children in the city, Lily and Rose, became inseparable, and their laughter filled the old house with a joy that had not been heard there for a long time. On a particularly beautiful afternoon, while Lily showed her new drawings to Joseph, she asked a question that touched the professor's heart deeply. "Mr. Meadows, do you think my dad will ever learn to love for real?" The old professor smiled, adjusting his glasses. "You know, little one, sometimes people need to lose everything to find what really matters. Your father is just beginning his true lesson." And so, in a small town in rural Missouri, a story of greed and betrayal turned into a lesson about love, forgiveness, and redemption. The house that was once the scene of abandonment now overflowed with life and hope. Joseph, sitting in his old armchair, watched Lily playing in the garden with Rose. His heart, though tired, was at peace. He had finally fulfilled his mission, not only as a professor, but as the guardian of a truth that, when revealed at the right moment, had the power to transform not only one life, but an entire community. And Lily, the little girl who arrived, trembling with fear on a stormy night, was now living proof that love, when true and unconditional, has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. Her smile, free and genuine, was the greatest reward that Joseph could have received in his 78 years of life. The following summer festival in Harmony Creek was the most special of all. In the center of the square, where the confrontation had taken place before, now Lily danced square dancing with joy, under the proud eyes of her new and true family. And on the walls of the community center, between books and drawings, a phrase written by Joseph perfectly summarized that story. The greatest treasure we can leave to the next generations is not gold or land, but the ability to love and be loved.